Guys, this week I was triggered in a good way, in a bad way, but I watched a video from one of my favorite YouTube families. I'll put a video link up there or somewhere, and they are called the Henrys. The person I know mainly is Belief in Fatherhood, and he has his wife Yvette, or Mrs. Belief, I think it is. So there's a video about her teaching her daughter how to sew, and just this whole thing is so beautiful. You should watch it. You should follow them. They also have another channel called How Married Are You, and it is definitely one of my favorites. You should check that out. But back to what I was talking about. I was watching this video yesterday during lunchtime. I'm working from home, so it was my lunchtime, and I just couldn't stop crying. It reminded me of the different dreams that I had growing up, and the time I wish I had to learn more and to develop those dreams and those interests. So I'm just gonna go straight into it. I think from when I became a teenager, I wanted to become a fashion designer. I just loved it. It was something that I was so fascinated by, and my grandfather from my mother's side of the family, so her dad was a tailor, and he actually did that as a profession, and as a consequence, or as a happenstance, all of his children knew how to sew. All of my aunts can sew. It's just amazing. Then apparently from my dad's side of things, my great grandfather, I think, is also a tailor, and I'll insert a picture here so you can see. I had this dream, and I didn't really talk much about it, and it wasn't very obvious. So one day, a couple family members were visiting my house. I grew up in Zimbabwe, by the way. So they were visiting the house, and they called me over, and they're like, "Dahlia, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I wasn't very forthcoming, and I was very shy, but I just said, I want to be a fashion designer. Mind you, this is an African household. These are Africans. They are not going to take that lightly, but I said it. I owned up. This is what I actually want to do. And they laughed. Hey, they laughed. They laughed so hard. It broke my heart. It really did. And they said that, well, you know, you're very bright. You go to a private school. You're in the first class. Why would you want to become a fashion designer? And I just was quiet, and they said, well, you know, you're doing physics for O-level, you know, you're doing all these science subjects, might as well do medicine. And because you love children, why don't you do pediatrics? And literally just like that, I was like, okay. And that was that. I stopped kind of walking around saying I wanted to do fashion design, because mind you, for O-levels I was actually doing fashion and fabrics at that time. Well, that's what they called it, and I loved it. It was my favorite. And yeah, I continued to do it. Actually, that was around Form 2, so I had to make a choice between fashion and fabrics, art or cookery. So I chose art, because I thought, if I'm gonna do fashion design, I'm gonna have to be really good at drawing. And I did it for A-level. I did well. I did just well in general for my O-levels. And then I still had the interest, and you know, but I worked hard to continue with the medicine side of things. Fast forward, I I'd say like almost a decade. I am doing my undergraduate. I didn't end up going into medicine. That's another story if you want to hear about that. I went into international development, into diplomacy, and I was doing really well in my degree, and they had an exchange program to go to Egypt. I didn't really have big interest in going to Egypt. Well, mind you, actually, before becoming a fashion designer, I wanted to become an archaeologist. And that was because my dad went to Egypt and he brought back all these Egyptian things. And, for a person who'd never left Zimbabwe, I thought, this is so cool. I want to learn more about Egyptology and all of that. So, okay, fast forward, we're going to Egypt. And because I was doing very well, I was chosen. There was only 5 of us going. I went. This was at the end of 2010, beginning of 2011. So anyone knows around that time, it was revolution. Literally, Egypt woke up to what was going on politically, and I was there. I witnessed it all. It was something else. That's another story for another day. If you want to hear more about it, let me know. But I will do another video actually about Egypt, because that's where I did my dissertation, and that's how I managed to author a book. So I will talk about that. Anyway, so I'm there. I'm not doing medicine. I'm doing international development, and that's where my focus is. But you could do additional courses. And one of the courses I saw was fashion design. And I was like, I am doing this. I am so doing this. I don't even care. Like, if I have to do extra hours and whatever, which is what I actually had to do. An additional course was Egyptology. So I did that too. And I'll definitely talk more about that later. Graduate, I get a first, all of that good stuff. Make it through the revolution, and fast forward 2 years later, my cousin's getting married. So she has this fabric, and she's like, I need a dress. And my aunt, who is the second born in my mom's family, she did a lot of sewing, and she was sewing for all sorts of people. So she said, okay, I can sew anything, but I just need a design. And I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So I designed a dress for my cousin for her second outfit, and there it is. And then my aunt then she models it and she makes it, and it looks amazing. And then this is pictures of her, and I was just blown away. And she said, okay, you should come to my house, I'll show you a couple things. She invited me to her house, so I did. I went there. It was amazing. She lived in Bulawayo, I lived in Harare. But I loved spending time with her, and she just was amazing. She gave me time, she gave me tips, and it was honestly the most precious time. Fast forward 2 years later, we find out she's got breast cancer, and we are just all taken aback. She is the funniest person you'd ever know. And she's so loving. She loved her family. She spent all that she had on her family, and she loved her husband so much. So the cancer, she tries to fight it off. She doesn't do chemo because at that time Zimbabwe chemo was substandard, and she was a nurse, so she understood that. She tried to go the traditional route. It didn't really go well, and she was really, really ill. Then fast forward a year later, 2015, she is very, very ill. She needs blood transfusion, all of that. It is a big thing. And around that time, my dad was also ill, and he had been ill for 9 years, and he was in hospital, and he sadly passed away. And I can talk more about that. Then my grandfather also gets diagnosed with cancer. He had prostate cancer. He's also unwell, and my aunt is extremely unwell nearing the end of 2015. So at that time, I started my master's at the London School of Economics, and it just was a lot to deal with. And anyway, fast forward a couple months, it's now November. I went to Zimbabwe to bury my dad, and I went to go see my grandfather. He was very ill. I went to go see my aunt. She was extremely ill, and you can imagine what my mom was going through, because it was her husband, her father, and her sister all unwell at the same time. So basically, my grandfather dies. He dies on my birthday, and then 5 days later, my aunt dies. And around that time, I was having exams at LSE. I still had to do my assignments. I was missing classes because I was in Zimbabwe. There was no way I could do things online. It just wasn't designed that way. So it was crazy. And then I had to go back. And I couldn't go to my aunt's funeral. And that just gets me every time. It was the hardest thing. So I come back, and I am devastated that I can't actually be at my aunt's. So I come back, I'm devastated that I can't be at my aunt's funeral, and I'm in the UK alone because my mom stayed back to bury her sister. And yeah, it was crazy. But I think, just to round it all up, it's about grief, it's about being triggered, it's about, things that you wouldn't think would get you back to that place. They would get you back. Even if they're good things, they can get you back to that sad place. But out of all of that, I recognize my aunt as being one of my cheerleaders. She literally made my dream come true. Even if it was in that one instance, she did it. So out of that, I learned 5 things. Out of that situation, I learned 5 things. And the first thing is the power of negative words or negative actions can have a big impact in your life. It can change the course of everything. And there's a really good video by Inspired Baobab that I like. I'm going to link it above too, or somewhere. You should check it out. It's really good. And basically, we have to be careful about what we say and how we act and what we do to people, because you can literally crush people's dreams and you won't even realize it. You think you're doing them a favor. You think, you know them more than they know themselves, and you think that you have a right to stop people going in a certain direction, or you think that because you're a big sibling or you're an aunt or whatever, you have a right to say something, but actually you don't. People should do what's on their heart, and they will learn and they will grow, and just always be supportive. And number 2, I learned the power of hard work. I wouldn't have been able to get to Egypt to learn more about fashion design if I hadn't worked hard, if I hadn't been in the top 10% of my class. So always work hard, even if it's not at your dream. Continue to just work hard. And the third thing I learned is the power of discomfort. When you try to put yourself in a place that is not yours, it will be uncomfortable. You know, when you see puppies going into boxes and things like that, they're not going to stay there long. They might be in there because they feel like, oh yeah, you know, I've made it into this box, or I've made it work, but they will move after a while. So there is power in discomfort because it makes you want to strive for more. The fourth thing I learned is the power of a dream cheerleader. Someone who believes in what your abilities are, someone who believes in your dream, and someone who rallies you on and helps you get to the next step of your dream. There is power in having those people. Identify those people in your life and keep them close for sure. And yeah, never overlook those people. Keep them close and appreciate them. And obviously, in my case, my aunt is gone. She's passed away. But that didn't stop me to continue to look into that dream, to make things. I'll post some pictures and videos so you can see. She inspired me, and she helped me to get to the next stage. But finally, the fifth thing that I learned is the power of carrying the torch yourself. And I'm just reminded of the Olympic Games and how, you know, they chose ordinary people to carry the torch. And those people represented something. And here's a picture of me with the Olympic torch. That was when I was working at Doctors Without Borders. Yes, even though I didn't become a doctor, I did work in international development to support doctors. And currently I'm actually a trustee for a charity called Zimbabwe Health Training Support, and I am still supporting medical professionals to do their best and to, you know, change the world in their profession. But I myself I'm not a doctor. I myself am not a doctor. So this is all just to say that you have to believe in yourself. And I'm sure you've heard this, and you know, but it's about carrying the torch for yourself, carrying the torch for your dreams, for your aspirations, just doing it. You know, when those people were carrying the torch, they didn't have a set step or anything. They ran however they felt, and there were different types of people who carried the torch. Some people were disabled, some people were very well abled. So it's about looking at your ability and how you can do the best for your dreams, how you can do the best for yourself. So this is all I wanted to talk about. I got triggered, but I also got inspired, and I had a good time remembering my aunt and what she did for me and how she changed my life, and how I hope I can be the same for someone someday. And yeah, it's amazing how one little act, one little invitation can change someone's perspective of themselves, change someone's perspective of how they can achieve their dreams. So be open to accept those little invitations, and be open to give those little invitations. They don't have to be too big, but they can change the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm not going to tell you all that other stuff. You know what to do. You watch YouTube videos. I hope that we can continue to talk and continue to share ideas. Just let me know If you want to talk about anything, I'm open, and count this as an invitation.